so much. I am extremely grateful to see so many faces out here in the audience, especially with this amazing weather that tonight gave us. I anticipate that there may be some people trickling in, which is great. They can join in on this conversation at any point. First off, want to say thank you to Dripping Springs Council of PTAs for supporting the Tiger Talk programs. If you don't know, these Tiger Talks happen throughout the district at different campuses, and so we are having the honor to host this one tonight, and so that's exciting for us. As parents, we are all navigating something that didn't exist when we were growing up, and that is kids on these smart devices and having this constant connection and social media use. So tonight is really not about having all of the answers. It is not about being perfect. It is really just about us coming together and being able to learn as a community together, and supporting each other as we figure out what works for our families. And by that, I don't mean that what works for us collectively. You're going to decide what works for you and your children and your family as a whole. And so that's really important, that you're going to hear perspectives, but you decide kind of what your formula for success is in your home. And hopefully you take away something from this evening that's helpful for your family. As a parent myself, obviously, those of you know this topic is very real and very important to me. Sometimes I talk too much about it, so sorry about that to my friends back there. But thanks for supporting me. You know, I first really want to express the gratitude that we can come together as a community, and especially having Sheriff Hipolito here and April here. But I really want to give an extra spotlight on Bella Rose. And those who do not know, this individual sitting right here is a high school senior. She is graduating this year. She's heading off to UT. She's got her family front and center supporting her. And really, this is the product of an amazing student who has been brought up by amazing educators in this district. And you know, she's had the first-hand experience of growing up in the digital world, so there's no one better than to share that perspective. But then you'll get to learn a little bit more tonight. We don't have enough time to hear every great thing that she has done with her research, but truly, she is an amazing wealth of knowledge. And I spent a morning at Mazama with her and just couldn't get enough. So I want to shine a little spotlight on our own dripping student. Now that I'm embarrassed, let me introduce our moderator. So this is Megan Borky. She is our Walnut PTA president. And so her role is just going to be guiding the conversation tonight and helping us dive into the insights that all of these panelists have, and really exploring different perspectives to share.
Thank you so much, Kenna. And thank you all for being here this evening. We are so grateful to have you joining us. I'm going to start with a little bit of housekeeping. If you did not see, we have childcare available in the gymnasium, and they do have food in there already, so your kids are being well taken care of. We have great middle school and high school volunteers that are having tons of fun with them. We also have sandwiches over here, so please grab some food and enjoy your dinner while you're here with us this evening. The sandwiches are from Summer Revival, and they were generously sponsored by Ally Medical ER. So thank you to Ally Medical for sponsoring the Tiger Talks program for DSISD. We're very grateful. And lastly, before I begin, I just wanted to do a little framing for this evening. We are going to be speaking specifically about kids, smartphones, and social media this evening, and we only have an hour together. We know there are many other great questions that could be around educational technology or devices for learning, and some of our panelists may touch on them, but we are really going to focus mostly tonight on phones and social media. So thank you for helping us stay on track and keep our focus on those areas. Our goal this evening is to walk away with a few practical tools, a little more confidence, and the reminder that we are not in this alone. We'll start with a few questions for our panelists and then open it up to you for questions at the end. Let's go ahead and get started by having each of our panelists briefly introduce themselves with your name, your role or background, and your connection to this topic. Sheriff Hipolito, will you kick us off?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity, Kenna and your team and the Council of PTAs. I appreciate the opportunity to visit with all of you guys. My name is Anthony Hipolito. I'm the current sheriff of Hays County. I've been in law enforcement going on 28 years. I do live here in Dripping Springs. Two of my daughters, my oldest daughter graduated in 2023 from the high school, and she attends Texas Tech, and I also have a senior daughter who's graduating this year as well. So tonight I'll talk to you from a law enforcement perspective and probably from a dad perspective as well. I started my law enforcement career over at the Austin Police Department, spent 23 years there, and I've been at the Sheriff's Office for 5 years. I started there in 2021 as a deputy. So as you can imagine, I haven't firsthand worked a lot of these cases, but I'm in pretty constant contact with my detectives who work these online solicitation of minors, sex trafficking, human trafficking, sexual assault cases of children that stem around our computers, our smartphones, our iPads, and everything else. So I'll try to give you a little insight from the law enforcement perspective, and also maybe some of the things that I've learned as a dad over the years as well. So I appreciate the opportunity. You sure can.
Hi everyone. Did you shut it off?
No.
Oh. My name is Requard, and I am the Educational Technology Coordinator for the district here. And I have about 26 years in education, a lot of those as a computer lab teacher. I spent some time working for Apple Education as a national trainer and traveled all over the country and taught teachers and students how to use the Mac and iPad in their classrooms in thoughtful and intentional ways. And I really try to transfer that over here. I see a lot of the good, the bad, and the ugly here in my role, and really just trying to change that for the better. I've gone through all of this that we're going to talk about as a mom. I have a 23-year-old son who's at Texas State, and I have a 20-year-old son who is at Arkansas. So I have been there, and I still live it with those two boys.
Hi guys, I'm Bella, as Kenna graciously introduced me. That's very sweet, but yes, I'm a senior right now at the high school, and next year I'm really excited to go to UT to study neuroscience, and my plan from there is to go to medical school, but I really want to focus on neuroscience and really how I got into that. So for my own mental health journey and dealing with anxiety and mental health struggles, kind of growing up in this age where social media and devices are so prevalent, I really was wondering why I was dealing with this, because as someone who really likes math and science, I really like to see the logic behind it. So a lot of people told me and told us just in school that mental health and that screen time is a big factor of it, and I didn't really understand that, and I didn't understand the reasoning. So I spent last summer actually conducting my own study on how this was happening and really looking at the correlation between screen time and brain structure, because that's what I'm super interested in. And my findings were so important that I really wanted to share them with a community. So that's why me and Kenna had talked about that, and we had talked about doing something like this where I can actually share what I found and share also from my experience as someone growing up in this time where, like I said, social media and kids on the screens are so common, and where y'all are navigating this. So I'm excited to share what I found in my research with you guys, and yeah, just to share also my experience.
I am Kenna Hamm. I am a local mom. I have a 5th grader and 3rd grader here at Walnut. I am also, my educational background is I'm a social worker. I have my master's in social work, and I am the founder of the kind of informal Facebook group that some of you are a part of, known as the DSISD Nest. And we have about 1,500 members. It's been around since 2023, so about 2.5 years as of now. And essentially it's just like-minded parents who want to kind of offer that peer support, parent-to-parent support for keeping kids safe in the world of smartphones and social media. And I also am an advocate for the Wait Until 8th campaign, which encourages families to wait until 8th grade to provide a smartphone. And so I will be able to kind of dive into that a little bit from my perspective, what I have learned, and talk a little bit about the differences between different types of devices.
Great, thank you all. We are so grateful for each of you being here today and for the different perspectives that you bring. So let's dive in a little deeper. I'd love to start off by having the panel talk to us a little more about what you're seeing right now when it comes to kids and smartphones and social media. Sheriff Hipolito, can you start us off with maybe some common online safety risks involving children?
Yeah, absolutely. In this day of age, I think it's hard for our kiddos to understand that the phone that we carry around in our pockets or our computers that we're looking at in our rooms, I don't think they realize that they can touch the other side of the world in just a blink of an eye. And from my perspective as law enforcement, I've seen it way too many times where young boys or young girls, their lives are tragically changed because of the cell phone. And where I'm coming from is not so much the mental health side of it, because that's a huge portion of it, but just the crimes that they're exposed to and the people they're exposed to with just the click of a button. And there's so many apps that are out there today, and so many ways for our children to access these apps and online websites and the dark web, and it just takes a few seconds. And the folks, these criminals who are doing these types of behaviors, they know exactly what they're doing. They're very, very targeted on who they go after, who they groom, and the ways they talk to these children. They do it so much, they're so good at it, and they simply convince our kids that it's okay, and they're there to take care of them, and they're there to provide food, they're there to provide money, they're there to provide their addiction, the drugs and the alcohol, they're there to buy them clothes. So there's a lot of things as parents that we can look at, and we all know our children better than the next person, right? The main thing for me is never, ever believe that it won't be your kid, because it will. We have several kids here that live in Dripping Springs that have been victimized over just the last year. And I can go into I won't go into too much detail about each specific case, but we just had a case just about 2-3 days ago where a kid who goes to the school district was victimized by a 49-year-old man. And it just happens over and over and over again. I see it almost daily, and it's sickening. And we have to come together as a community, and so I appreciate the opportunity just to try to educate you guys on what's out there and how they're attacking our young people.
I would say on that same note, as a personal story, one of my sons, my older son, you know, as much as the guardrails and everything that I've had as a parent, he was talking to somebody on Instagram through direct messages, and you know, this person kind of said they had a relationship, they kind of fell in love, and then there was this sad story about how she got kicked out of her parents' house and she didn't have any money, and he sent her $500, and that ended up being some person in Nigeria, actually. So, you know, that kind of stuff happens, and if you think, like he said, if you think it isn't going to happen, unfortunately it does. But anyway, I digress, but that's my personal story. You know, one of the things that I see all the time just in our schools is kids are, as you know, 100% addicted to technology. And it's that dopamine hit that they get from, you know, getting on social media or getting a like, or anything that just kind of thrills them, just like an addict would when they have like a hit of the drug that they use. And you know, I will say that we have seen the greatest change in our middle schools and high schools with the cell phone ban. It has been life-changing for our teachers and students. You know, you see them in the cafeteria playing Uno and talking and actually having conversations, which last year you would have not seen that kind of dialogue happening at lunch. Another thing that I would like to say is that, you know, kids aren't just 10 steps ahead of everybody in this room. They are 1,000 steps ahead of everybody in this room. And just as an example, you can put all the parent filters on your kid's phone in the world, and they will figure out how to bypass them by using a proxy or a VPN and get to whatever content they want. And it's crazy the things that these kids can do. All it takes for you to figure out how, if they have one of these proxies or VPNs on their phones, is a very quick Google search on how do I detect that my student or my child has this on their phone, and then have the conversation. If they have deleted an app, you can always go to the App Store. If it has the little cloud with the download button, you know that they have downloaded it before and they've just deleted it for your eyes. So that kind of thing happens all the time. So it's just, it takes a village for us to kind of come together and be aware of those kinds of things.
Going off of that cell phone ban that she was talking about, I had firsthand experience with that. And, you know, when I found out with that over the summer, I go on my phone, I text my friends, did you hear about the new law? Like, this is crazy, what the heck? Why is this happening? I mean, I was, a little bit upset at first, but as I went throughout the year, I have grown to love it. I've had so many conversations with people who I would be sat next to in class, and I would just go on my phone instead of talking to that person. But now that we, have no choice, I really love to talk to these people, and I've gotten to know so many people that I would not have talked to before. So I really like that, and I think it's going to be super meaningful for also middle schoolers too, because it's an awkward age. I have 2 sisters in middle school right now, and I remember going through it myself. It's awkward, but really actually talking to these people instead of just escaping to the phone, I think it's going to be so much more meaningful for them, and to grow up into high school, and to go into high school also with these connections that have already been made. But another thing I also wanted to touch on is that addiction of the phone, and how much that I've seen it, especially as I've gotten older. Me and my friends, we kind of have this joke that whenever we're hanging out and one of us goes on our phones, we'll call each other a screenager, and we'll be like, get off your phone, you're stop being a screenager. And we do this out of poke fun, but also because of we'll do it without even realizing it. One of us will just open up Instagram and we'll start scrolling, and we won't even realize we're doing that, but it's really because of that dopamine hit that we get that. And so we like to keep each other in check and just keep us really present and grounded in the moment. And another thing that I see this in is I serve at a restaurant, and sometimes I'll come up to tables and the people, this family, is just scrolling on their phone mindlessly. And I'm like, why are we not talking to each other? Why are we not being present? And I know it's a little bit old-fashioned, even though I'm Gen Z, but I'm like, why are we not actually having conversation with each other, being present, really connecting? So I've really just have seen this more often, and that's what also made me want to study this and study the neurological impacts, which I'll get into later, but really just my personal experience, I've seen it become a lot more prevalent.
Yes, so I kind of call what you were just referring to as a digital pacifier. So essentially when you see, and we've all been guilty of it, myself included, at a restaurant, a kiddo sitting there on their iPad or on mom and dad's iPhone, instead of being engaged, looking up at the waiter, giving their order, patiently waiting for their food, learning those life skills. And trust me, you may see me at Flores next week and be like, I saw your kid on your iPhone. But the goal truly is for us to instill these life skills for our kids. And what's happening is the dopamine hits that they are all referring to, where it's this constant connection. And so we're trying to compete with that dopamine machine, and it's hard. It is very challenging. But really, I think watching our kids be captivated by these reels and these shorts and things like that, it's concerning. It's concerning to see them, and it preys on their insecurities, having these smartphones and having the access to the World Wide Web, like you're talking about, someone across the world that they may fall victim to and not have any idea that it is someone who's preying on them. Things that just, what I see is things getting out of control. The filters are too much on their faces. It's creating body image issues with kids. There's just so much that we're going to continue to touch on tonight. But one of the things that I think is so important to me is you'll see the flyer that you were handed by the beautiful girls in the hallway is a QR code where you can learn about alternatives to smart devices, because people often will think I'm anti-phone, but I'm not. I'm anti-smart device. There's a difference between, my kids will get a communication device, they'll get a phone, probably before people think that I would even get one. But there's such a difference between those two. And so when we talk about smartphones, we're talking about the iPhone, we're talking about the comparable devices that have the access to the internet. And so I would encourage you to do your research and understand kind of what we're talking about, what the worries and concerns are from the law enforcement perspective, the mental health perspective, the dopamine hits, all of that, and think again before you just hand them that smart device.
Thank you all, and thank you especially for sharing your personal stories. It's so powerful. So let's start unpacking some of the challenges together. How does social media impact kids emotionally, socially, and what is the impact on their brain? Bella, I'd love for you to start this one, please.
Yeah, so I'd love to really nerd out here and to talk to you guys about my research that I did. So yeah, what I was saying before, I researched the relationship between screens, and this isn't just screen time. I didn't just look at the amount of hours that kids were spending on their phones. I broke it down into social media and messages and FaceTime, and really looked at the impacts that all of these different types of screen time had on the brain development of adolescents specifically. So I did this over the summer, and I had a data set already that was done for me, and I analyzed these two relationships, and what I found was it was really shocking. Basically, I saw that the emotional regulation portion of the brain, so what is actually causing the kid to respond rationally or to lash out. A person with high functioning emotional regulation will be able to, respond kind of normally to a crisis, but someone with low functioning correlation or low functioning connectivity, it's harder for them to respond in a normal manner, and that manifests in symptoms of anxiety and depression and these mental health struggles. And so what I saw that screen time was doing is that it was lowering this connectivity. It was making it harder and really affecting this emotional regulation side of the brain. And so it was directly causing anxiety and depression and all of these symptoms, specifically anxiety though. And so I realized this, and so it made me think about what's actually happening and what's actually happening in the students today, and how they are on their phones, they don't even realize that it's happening. And when they have this anxiety and stress about tomorrow's tests, and on the Sunday scaries, when they're really stressed about the week ahead, they go on their phones to kind of escape from this stress in their head, and they leave their worries behind, and they either go into a video game world, or they'll go into someone else's world, and they'll start scrolling Instagram, and it'll feel better for a little bit. But as soon as they put down their phone, the worries and the stresses of today's world come flooding back. And it becomes even worse because they don't have emotional regulation. It's completely crazy, and they can't really control their emotions. And so I saw this, and this is really, really scary, and it's really hard. And that's why I wanted to talk with you guys about actually there are these correlations between the two areas. And also these kids, the adolescents that I focused on, it's in the critical period of their brain being developed. So it's actually called the critical period, and it's when their brain is changing, and it's harder for it to change back and to revert back into normal regulation later in life than it is, and it's easier for it to actually become worse at this period of life, which is why it's so crucial that we talk about this and why you guys understand this and actually do what's best for your kid, and understand that screen time and social media and all of these things are hurting their development in their long run. So it's kind of a more proactive approach than a reactive approach.
Yes. I was gonna say that I think that a big thing to remember is that our brains weren't designed to take in as much information as we take in on a daily basis. And I work with teachers every day, and they can't compete with the grip technology has on these kids. Everything is boring to kids because they're always, consumed with something that is more exciting. And so little things like homework or family dinners or just little things that we do are boring, or things that teachers are trying to do to engage students that is boring to them. They can't even watch a 10-minute video in class because 10 minutes is too long, because they're used to reels that are 1 minute. I don't know if you've ever seen, if you have a teenager, if you've seen them watch TV, they cannot watch a full show without looking at their phone. And I will say that I'm kind of guilty of that too. Sometimes that I'll just get on and see, oh, what am I missing? And if I'm feeling that way as a grown-up, I can only imagine how these kids are feeling like, oh, I need to see if I have an email, or, all the different things that our brains are constantly consuming. I will also say that, one of the things that we see as educators is that, kids will come into kindergarten without certain skills that they used to have, like being able to write or cut with scissors or have conversations, emotional meltdowns because they can't use an iPad, or they can't have that thing that they're used to having as a reward. So they're dysregulated a lot, and it's because of technology. And I have a sister-in-law who has a son on the spectrum, and one of the things that I've worked really hard with her is to take away the technology from him as a reward. And you have to also tell the school that they have to help you with that, because if we're constantly giving that reward and we're giving that dopamine, then when you take away that also promotes that dysregulation that we're seeing a lot in our younger kids.
Repeat that for me.
Sure.
I'm not sure I can add much more than these two ladies just did.
Yeah, how does social media impact kids emotionally, socially, and what is the impact on the brain?
Well, I think it's fairly obvious at this point, with all the research that's out there, that it truly affects our young children, right? And as parents, we have to juggle when is the right time to give your kiddo a cell phone. Being that I have two daughters, and obviously each of them have different personalities. We battled with that. My wife and I battled with when is the right time, and I won't say I think I failed as a parent at times with some of them, right? My youngest daughter, I probably shouldn't have given her a cell phone at the same time that I gave my oldest daughter. Of course, I wanted to be fair. My oldest daughter got a cell phone in 8th grade or whatever it was. I felt I needed to give my youngest daughter a cell phone. And just a quick story, she would be on TikTok all the time. That's just what we do when we get on the phone. We're looking at reels, or we're looking at shorts, or we're looking at TikTok. And it did play a part in her mental health. And so we took TikTok away. And what we learned is, probably a month or two after we took TikTok away, she actually came to us and said, "Mom, Dad, I'm so glad you took that away from me. My mental health, I'm a much more happier kid because of that." So that's just a little personal story of how we saw it affect my youngest daughter, because she was on it all the time. So I think, and I say this all the time, being a parent and raising children is the hardest thing that we've ever done as parents. And we try to do what's right, and we try to monitor, and we try to do everything we can, but you just can't beat yourself up if you fall short. Your kids are going to make mistakes, but we just have to be proactive as parents, and understand that your kid could be a victim, and your kid could be having some mental health issues because of that electronic that's in his or her hand, and not deny the fact that it could happen to them. Because I've seen it a lot of times where the parents really didn't believe my officers or my deputies or my detectives, because they just didn't think that their kid would do something like that. And it's not the kid's fault, right? This is what we're having to deal with as parents, and what they're having to deal with as children. And of course, when we were growing up, we didn't even have a pager. I think I got a pager in high school. And we had those cell phones that I used to payphone and all that stuff, so I didn't have that constant. And who knows where I would be today if that was the case, right? So we've come a long way with this education and getting the word out to parents, but I just see it time and time again where our kiddos become victims, and it's not their fault, but we have to do better as a community.
I actually wanted to add on to that with like a personal story. So my family, we like to travel a lot. We've had I've been very thankful that we've got to travel so much. But sometimes we'll go out of the country and my Wi-Fi doesn't reach out of the country. And so we would get there and I would immediately get off the plane and check, oh, do I have Wi-Fi here? And usually a lot of the times the answer would be no. And I would get really upset. I'd be like, oh my gosh, like can we call them? Like is there something we can do? I can't go 2 weeks without Wi-Fi. But those vacations have been the best. I've had the most memories like still now because I remember, because I was so present with my family. And I remember even my mom would say, you seem so much happier when you don't have Wi-Fi, because then I'm not just really thinking about the notifications. I'm not checking my phone for a notification that I don't even have because I can't get them. So it's been really fun just to also really unplug from my normal life and then also from my phone life, and I don't have that connection. And so similarly, I've also done the social media fasts, and I've done a month without it. And sometimes it'll just be because I feel like I need it and I'll go delete it on my phone. Because if I feel like I need it and I feel like I can't delete it, that's when I know I should. And so when I do that, I'll get back on it and I'll be a lot less, I'll be wanting to pick it up less, and I'll re-download it when I know I don't need it, but I like to have it because, like Kenna said, I'm not anti-phone, I'm not anti-social media. I have it on my phone right now, but when it gets to the point where it's a dependency and it is an addiction, I think that's when it becomes a problem, because there are a lot of benefits, but when the benefits don't outweigh the bad things and the consequences of it, that's when it becomes an actual problem.
I love that. And just, I'm sure in your research, looking at the difference between children's developing brains in that critical period versus adults and how we, utilize technology. So one of the important things for us to always remember as parents, I feel like, and I remind myself, is it's never too late to pull something back. I think sometimes we think, well, I've already given this or I've already done this. You can always adapt and change. Even in my house, I'm having to adapt things. My children do not have a smartphone. They don't have even a basic phone. But even with what my daughter loves as a 5th grader to call it, my baby iPad. And I'm like, okay. And even with that, she was able with Messenger Kids to have her anxiety taking over her emotional regulation, and she's only able to contact me. But when we go on a date night, that anxiety and that amygdala, her downstairs brain and worry brain, was telling her, I need my mom, I have to have my mom, I have to call my mom. No, she didn't need that. And so I had to make sure, okay, we've had this Messenger Kids, but now we're going to limit this and we're going to change this. And so we're all just learning, and like we opened up with, no one's here to try and be perfect, but it's important that we are just really looking at the situation. And honestly, for me, when I think about the emotional impact, the social impact, I'm like, okay, she may be left out of things, which is a lot of our concerns, right? If they're the only one, which is why you'll hear me talking so much about power in numbers. And this is powerful, just this room right here. And hopefully the next time we have a talk, it'll just continue to grow. And so together, I feel like we can do something good.
Thank you all. So I would love for each of you to share 2 to 3 realistic boundaries or rules that every family should consider. Kenna, will you kick us off with that one?
Okay, yes. So as a parent, for my household, what I feel is important, the very first one is not having a Wi-Fi enabled device in any closed bedrooms. So not having, whether that's a smart TV or an iPad or an iPhone, whatever it may be, not having that Wi-Fi device be able to be used behind closed doors. It protects their mental health, it protects their sleep, and so I'd encourage for us, having devices charging outside of the child's room. If they use their iPad in their room for research, they're working on a project or whatever it may be. If you decide that it works for your family, perhaps just bringing it out at night. I think that is healthy for them. Let's see, I made notes on a couple others so that I wouldn't forget. We also utilized a family device agreement, and so when I allowed her to use her baby iPad to have Messenger Kids, we started it with one friend first, and she hasn't gotten past that one friend because I haven't seen her have that maturity to be able to regulate herself when communicating. And so we're with training wheels, right? And so we set up this family device agreement, and she had to read through it, she had to initial, we all signed together. And so it really just kind of put the onus on all of us to be responsible with that device, and it's plastered on the fridge so that we can reference back and we can adapt and change that. The other piece that I would say is I like to compare devices to like car seats. We start out putting our baby in an infant car seat, then we go to a booster when it feels safe, then they're buckled in the back seat, then they move to the front seat, then they have supervised, getting their learner's permit, and then finally they drive on their own. So I would encourage you to consider doing that with devices. Gradually looking at it as essentially like graduated responsibility as they're showing that maturity, and doing it together. If you're gonna let them have a device and have Instagram, they're gonna be scrolling, well, y'all sit on the couch together and scroll, because I promise you they're gonna come across things that you don't know that they have seen. April and I have had many conversations about this, so those are my 3, what works for me today, but ask me again tomorrow.
Yeah, I liked all that you said. I really like the no phones in the bedroom part, because like even a lot of my friends right now, like we'll talk about like, oh my gosh, I'm so tired. Oh, how much sleep did you get last night? Oh, I went to bed at 3 a.m. Why did you do that? Oh, up on TikTok. Like even like still now, like we're about to be adults and go to college. I know I value my sleep, but for these kids, it's even more important that they actually get their sleep. And so I didn't have the phone out of my bedroom, but my parents are doing that with my younger sisters now, and I 100% see the value in doing that. Yes, they're not looking at things behind closed doors, and they're what they're doing on their phones are being seen by my parents, but they're also not being able to be up scrolling and be up on Instagram and TikTok and doing that. So I really like that. I also, something that we do is we don't do phones at dinner time or during family times. So, or if we're watching a movie together, we all want to be really present in the moment, and we want to be talking. And we also want to use that time to talk about how we're feeling about our day, so that we don't turn to phones for the answer. So we'll ask each other about, if we're worried about anything or how we're doing. And this is our chance to actually get those worries out and to kind of figure out the answer together, instead of going in a room spiraling about the next test tomorrow. Instead, we can talk about it. Okay, what are we going to do to study for that tonight? So I really like that, and really just like the kind of connection that it brings together. And then I think the other area that my research showed me is that not every screen time type has the same relationship to brain development. And like they've all been saying, it differs with each person, it differs with each family. But what I've seen is that streaming videos doesn't have a strong effect as social media does. It's also different for girls and guys. Girls tend to spend more time on Instagram. Guys tend to spend more time on streaming. And for girls on social media, I think is super, super hard, because a lot of that stems from comparison, and that is also what stems from, or what causes mental health issues. So I think that not just creating a screen time limit that says only 2 hours a day, but actually going into the screen types and limiting maybe social times or video streaming times, and also talking about that with your kid. Me and my mom have had lots of conversations, and she's explained to me why she's doing this, and that why really helps me to understand instead of just to be angry. And while I was a little bit upset when I was in 7th grade and couldn't have social media, she helped me to understand that, and that has made so much more of a difference for me. So yeah, I think just very clear communication is another thing that I would recommend.
I would say the best thing that we can do as parents is be good models and put our phones down. I know that when my boys come home from college, I try really hard to be a good role model to them. So if I'm sitting there scrolling on my phone the whole time, I can't really, complain to them about, gosh, you're always on your phone, put that thing down. So I try to be a good role model in that perspective. And my husband's always like, hey, get off your phone. So I try really hard to do that. But, as I look back, I know I made a lot of mistakes as a parent. We gave our kids iPads so that they could use iMessages and, text their friends. And, I thought I was doing the right thing by using parental controls and taking off Safari and all the things. But, one time I think I saw that my son was on YouTube and he didn't have the YouTube app, he didn't have Safari. How did he get onto YouTube? And he was using, a backdoor way to get onto YouTube. That's why I was saying that they're so smart. They know things that we could never have figured out. And so just kind of being aware of that kind of thing, I think is important. And I will definitely echo the whole bedroom thing. But again, I'm guilty of that too, where you kind of, as they get older, you just kind of get more relaxed and you trust them. But it's such a it's like having this temptation little thing in your pocket, and they're always just going to be tempted by that grip and that hold that it has over them. So just something to be aware of. I think the awareness is key to making any kind of change.
Well said, all three of you guys. I'm not sure I could add much more, but if I could go back when my kids were in elementary school, I would definitely, I would do all of that, which we did some of that. But for me and my wife, it was about follow through. It was about following through with the rules and making sure that we were going and being hard and understanding that we have to follow through in order for them to be successful. And at times, I think we chose to, well, let's just pick your battles type thing, and it's much easier at times with parents. And we're tired. It's a long day at work, and we don't want to deal with it. We don't want to fight that battle, and we just give up for that night. But every time you give an inch, our kids are going to take a mile. And when we're talking about electronics and technology, both my daughters can run circles around me and how to hide things from me, and how they did it how they did it, right? So I think for me, my wife, I would say follow through as a parent. Once you set these rules and the boundaries, follow through with it. Because with my oldest, we did an agreement, and with my youngest, we didn't, right? So there's a lot of things that we probably, we failed as parents, but again, it is what it is. We have to learn from it, you deal with the consequences, and you just try to learn from it and be better.
Thank you so much for sharing that, and thank you all for everything you've shared this evening. I think we've all learned a lot, and I know I will hold a lot of those personal stories as I go forward as a parent. So we now want to take the last 10 minutes to open up for questions to you, the parents, the caregivers, those who have joined us this evening. Please raise your hand if you have a question and talk loudly, and if you need to come up and use the microphone, I'm happy to meet you halfway. And please just remember that this is a judgment-free space, so no question is too big or too small. All right, does anybody want to get us started? Yes, go ahead.
So, I worked in technology with AT&T Mobility for 16 years. I was at the forefront of the cell phone industry with smartphones. And so it's funny because first it was text messaging, and then it was multimedia messaging, and then came the smartphones, right? And with every step we could look ahead and kind of see what was coming. All the troubles that started coming into my store, that families are facing and dealing with, everything from, sextortion to child pornography on phones to, just everything that you guys have talked about. So I guess, being a mom, and now what I see, I work with him, and a lot of my job is our social media accounts. So I spend a lot of time on social media. And I think my big concern is AI. Because almost everything I see now is computer generated. And so how do we deal trying to explain to them that something that I can't even tell is fake, right? And I'm in it every day. I really have to look for those tells. How do we help our kids navigate this? Because I feel like this is the next thing. So, I mean, I get where we're at now, but I'm trying to think 5 years from now, when my kids are starting their journey with smartphones, because we're not there yet. How do we know what we're doing yet? Because I don't.
So,
I think it goes back to.
I'll say that just as an educator with, experience with, what we're dealing with AI in schools is just telling kids everything that you see online, you have to question and check its validity because you have no idea. And even adults, one of my girlfriends sent me something and I said, that's AI, right? She said, what? I'm like, that is 100% AI. But you really have to have that discerning eye to look at things through a different lens to say, is that real? And unfortunately, this is unknown territory for all of us, but something that our kids are going to probably get really good at over time, knowing what's true, what's not true. And I think, unfortunately, I don't have the best answer for that. But I think just being like a super sleuth, and looking at things deeply and questioning everything, unfortunately.
oh, I would love to hear what you ask.
Yeah, so I'll just add, so there's I work in cyber. There's a multi-billion-dollar industry aimed at trying to get adult humans to recognize what is or is not real online. And people are falling victim all the time, right? Really senior level people who are being spoofed by CEOs or CFOs who are being deep-faked, and adults are falling victim. So I'd say, what do we do with our kids? We have to start with over-education, over-exposure. I run the Cardiva's program here in Dripping Springs as well, and in the 5th grade, for 5th grade girls, we do an entire social media kind of online awareness. And I brought in deep fake technology to some of these Cardiva's programs, and we're showing them hey, this is Santa who sounds like a young girl. And so I just encourage you guys not to run away or hide from AI or AI exposure. I think the more that kids learn about it in a young age, they understand what AI can actually produce, then they won't be afraid of it, and they'll be more likely to identify something that maybe doesn't look exactly real. So there's my 2 cents there.
I love that.
Thank you.
Perfect.
This is Bella's mother.
I think one thing too with the AI, this is just a side thing, but is it also is good. And that's something my husband and I are both in tech as well, and that's the thing that's going to be very hard for us as parents is AI is right. AI writes awesome code, it can write awesome, all sorts of things it does really well. And so there's a whole nother level, just saying fake, 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 and that's one thing, yes, there's a lot of fake from AI, but there's also a lot of legit good things that's gonna come out of AI too, and I think that just goes back to our same level as parents, is teaching them moderation, everything in moderation. You can trust it, you can have good things from it. There's also going to be that other side that can be harmful, and we have to use caution. Just as a parent, for me, I think of it as social or anything else. We just have to say, hey, don't be afraid, this isn't all fake, because I think that's where you get yourself as a parent. This is all fake, it doesn't matter, and you're discrediting it, but they're going to learn that they are going to be able to trust it, and they're going to want to trust it because it's probably going to help them do their job one day. So it can't be, oh, this is all bad. Let's just shut it out. This is all bad. It's all fake. And that's what they're learning on YouTube, because they see these videos that are oh, this is them doing a flip on YouTube on AI, and that's fake. But then this is the real version. But AI will be a huge staple for all of their careers in the future. So you have to understand that there's going to have to be knowledge around it too,
Balance.
Thank you, everyone, for chiming in. That was really helpful. I think I saw Lainey first.
I have a daughter in that part of his program, so I really appreciate you doing that lesson. It was really great. Does the district do anything like that? Like, because I'm mom, so eventually it's like, I got it, lady. Like, quit talking to me about all of this. Like, is the district coming in and teaching them, you know, anything about, you know, social media and everything behind it?
We do digital citizenship lessons that cover, you know, cybersecurity, social media, things like that, appropriate for the grade levels. Because obviously there's some things that we're going to share with kindergartners that we're not going to share, or with fifth graders that we're not going to share with kindergartners and vice versa. So yes, it's part of our technology TEKS that we teach digital citizenship, and that includes, you know, not promoting social media, but social media awareness and you know, things like that. So yes, it's part of the TEKS. You can actually see all of those TEKS if you're interested. They're on the district website. If you go to, you know, DSISD, the website, and you go to academics, and then there's a little button that says digital learning, and all of those are listed, just if you're ever curious about what is taught. And a lot of those are taught in our libraries and in our classrooms, just to kind of, you know, promote deeper conversations, but yeah.
I think I saw Adrian. Is that Adrian? No.
I think for Hamm was first, but I have a question too. You can go first. So I know you've done your, you know, neuroscience study. This is what you love to do. But to your peers, what works? What resonates with them when you're having these conversations? Is it education? Do I need to sit my kids down and you know, tell them what the effects of the brain, or are they just kind of glossing over that part? What really resonates with those who aren't as, you know, driven and you know, as you are? And you're so intelligent. I really appreciate all your information. But you know, what have you heard and seen? Some of the, let's say, devil's advocate on this part.
Yeah, so I've definitely talked to my friends about that, and when I talk to them, I try to emphasize less on the sciencey part, but more on the personal side and more on the emotional side. So just really like making it clear there is a direct connection between screen time and anxiety. Like the brain structures, that is what I researched. That's what made sense for me, because I didn't see the logical connection between this. And I think for more people who actually really want to see kind of the steps, it goes social media, brain structures, and decreases that connectivity, and that helps, and that is manifest in anxiety. But you know, that middle part gets a lot more complex in ways that like we don't even know yet, and that's something that I'm excited to dive deeper into college undergrad studies. But for kids and for people that just need to understand screen time, anxiety, screen time, depression, social media, comparison, anxiety. So just kind of maybe like cutting out that middle part. And if they're interested in it, like, yes, that would be amazing. Have them do their own research on that. There are so many studies out there. Like he said, there's more studies being done every day about that. But just so it makes sense, yeah, screen time, anxiety. Yeah.
So once our kids are old enough to have social media, like my biggest fear with 3 daughters is the victimization, or like you were talking about what's happening in Dripping Springs. Are there any like absolutes where you would say, do not allow your teenagers to have this, or check this every day, or anything we can do when they are old enough to prevent that from happening?
You know, there's, just so everyone knows, there's like hidden apps, like there's a calculator app that looks like a calculator, but it's really not. It's a hidden photo vault, like things like that to be aware of. There's an app called Kick, where they can, it's all just private messaging. I would stay away from things like that. I mean, you could probably Google top 10 apps that teenagers should avoid from a parent lens. I think that you would probably get some really good information, but
She's being modest. She has traveled the country, and she has a list that's very helpful and has been interviewed on it.
So, But also, like so many of these apps, you know, TikTok being one of them, was designed to be addictive. And in fact, there was just a lawsuit that was just, that, yeah, Meta, that they did, in fact, create these addicting apps for kids. And so I think that all of that kind of stuff is coming to light. And so I would just, you know, you can put the screen time limits on those. That's what I do for myself, because I can definitely go down the rabbit hole of, you know, watching TikToks myself. Isn't that embarrassing to say? But I mean, I can definitely go down that rabbit hole as well. And then my little screen time notification comes up, and that's good for me. I think that's good for kids. It just reminds them, okay, I've had enough today. And so that's what I would suggest doing once they do have those apps. If anybody else has any.
The majority of our cases that we're seeing with our young children that are getting victimized, the main one that we see over and over again is Snapchat. That's the really big one, because our predators out there are using the Snap Map on there, because a lot of our children leave it open in public, and that's how they're targeting specifically different children throughout our community. That's a real big one. Another one that we're seeing quite a bit is, believe it or not, is Roblox. A ton of our kids play Roblox. My kid had it for a long time, but a lot of the predators use Roblox and target our children. And then they start on Roblox, and they'll swing them over to an app called Discord, and then either WhatsApp or Telegram or Signal, where a lot of it's encrypted. So they use, you know, Instagram and Facebook and Snapchat to target, and they'll send them over to different apps to groom them and start, you know, buying clothes for them and drugs and alcohol.
Thank you all so much. Oh, did you have something to add?
No, I was just going to say, it's very interesting to ask your kids, hey, can someone message you on Roblox? Like, I encourage you just to ask that question, and they probably will say, well, I get them, but I don't respond to them. It's kind of scary.
Well, thank you all so much. Thank you everyone for joining us this evening. We've hit our time. I know we could talk about this for hours, so thank you all for joining us. Thank you to our panel for everything that you shared and for all of your stories. And yes, just thank you again, and a special thank you to DSISD for hosting